welcome back. I want to get straight back to Lolu. Lolu, we are still talking about, just some of the complications of what international agencies, or rather networked agencies, are struggle with in terms of where the local agency feels a bit strangled. I tend to agree with you. I used to be marketing director for the continent, so I know the challenges that you're talking about. That you get told that this is how it looks and this is how it works international, and it's been decided by an agency out of London. Mm-hmm. How have you dealt with the challenge, Lolu?
Well, at the end of the day, it really depends on the kind of client that you are working with. Quite a few of them are ready to listen and accept the local insights. Unfortunately, quite a few others are understandably rigid, and they just want to roll out what has been agreed centrally. So it depends on who at any point in time you're dealing with or talking to. But again, I'd like to stress that sometimes if the local agency feels very strongly that what the network partner is doing is not likely to work, we've had a few situations where the local agency would resign the piece of business.
Lolu, if I could just comment on that for a moment, and then I'm going to just ask Odette for a point of view. That is part of the problem, that we're still looking at creativity as some sort of self-contained unit. The simplest way to motivate local cultural nuance and the effectiveness thereof is to link advertising to return on investment. And Odette, is this not part of the problem? It's clear, if you look at studies of comprehension, if you look at response rates, if you look at activation, that cultural nuance, whether linguistic or in whatever format, tends to have a higher response rate. Has anybody within the agency sector driven some kind of understanding of cultural nuance and local nuance as a more effective way of doing advertising? That would cut through everything. Absolutely,
marketing 101. You've got to reach the consumer in a way that resonates and that's relevant with the consumer. So you don't need to look at cultural nuances post-campaign. You need to understand before you embark on the campaign that the way to reach the consumer is to reach the consumer in a way that is relevant and meaningful. In global marketing, you learn about cultural diversity. And when you are entering new markets, there are various market penetration strategies, least of which is JVs, where you look at partnering with people from the local market in order to do work that will resonate with the local market, because as a foreigner you're coming in and you don't quite get the cultural nuances. But I just want to touch on something else. In South Africa we have a code of conduct that governs tenders and pitches. And when you talk about large and small agencies, what we advocate in South Africa is that no agency should be hired on creative work. We say that all agencies should be hired on their credentials and on case studies. Now, this levels the playing field, and it enables even the small guy to put forward a case of effectiveness, what they've done for another brand or in their portfolio that generated some kind of return on investment.
But they're never going to get a chance. They're not going to get a chance because already at pitch level, or at the pitch, when they ask for RFPs, they already say you must be part of a global network.
Not
because
necessarily.
We do business. Well, I know for certain now there's at least a couple of the big brands that we know here in South Africa, which are on pitch, and that's their prescript. The prescript is you must be part of a big global network.
And
so that little guy you're talking about is never going to get a chance.
There's a question of scale as well.
Scale, I agree.
Traditionally retail advertising, for instance, has always required scale. So it's important to be creative, but you actually have to live by an incredibly tight deadline. So I think there's an argument for scale and this over and above creativity.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Clara, let me just get Clara in here. Clara, in your old life,
Old life.
When your McDonald's life.
Your previous existence.
Your
I think is the phrase you might be looking for, yeah.
In your previous life at McDonald's, and maybe perhaps even now in your current, in your new life post McDonald's, how have you dealt with these challenges? You know, I mean, we spoke two things here. Two things we spoke about is the local nuance. But the second thing is really the opportunity for the young up-and-coming agency to really get to play in the big leagues, to pitch for a McDonald's, to pitch for an MTN, for example.
Mm-hmm. I agree with Odette. Sometimes it's very difficult because when I came into South Africa, we were actually prescribed the agency that we had to work with.
Hey, there we go, is what I'm talking about.
All right. But after being here and knowing what I wanted to get in order to grow the business, then we were able to call in other people. I think a lot of it has to do with what the clients want. Do I want a big agency because that's the way big brands go?
Or you got a big ego.
Right.
Or you know, sometimes.
Or do I want somebody that's going to help me evolve and grow my business? And that, I think, makes a difference on kind of who you even invite to the pitches.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a really good point. So, Clara, in your previous existence, as opposed to your old life, he does this to me all the time. Your previous existence. Would it shock you to discover that the top digital agency in the world is Accenture,
Yes.
followed by IBM,
Yes.
followed by, and
Yeah.
so we go, and the number 4 agency, multidiscipline, is again Accenture now. And it's ahead of well-known names like Ogilvy and BBDO. These are the names you and I cut our teeth on. That was aspirational. How does the world kind of allow for consultants to become the 4th biggest ad agency in the world and the biggest digital agency in the world?
I kind of think it goes back to what are people looking for. We were talking earlier about being able to read numbers and understand the nuances of numbers. And maybe that's where we've gone. We've gone too far to that side, the accountability side, as opposed to what we're accustomed to. Building a campaign that resonates with the consumer based on understanding the consumer.
I'm the media guy at this table, so accountability is something I understand. But Lolu, let me just come back to you and ask you the question then. As an independent agency, having previously been anchored in an international group, do you see yourself as a consultant? What is your point of difference as an offering? Is it creativity? Is it cultural nuance? Is it that you're just a better consultant than some of the other groups?
Well, for us, because it's not a very big market compared to maybe South Africa or the UK, you tend to find out that the agency, a competent agency, wants to do almost everything well. You know, you do all of the creative, and in the last 5 years, we've developed the category for consultants. In actual fact, when I was the APCON chairman, one of the things that we put into the new APCON code was to create a category specifically for consultants, because we know that not all clients want a big agency, not all clients want a full service agency. Sometimes some of the clients even have in-house agencies and they need an external consultant to help them guide the activities of what's going on inside. So it's not unusual now in Nigeria. You've got banks, you've got manufacturing companies that have consultants and also have their creative and strategy agencies on the side as well.
Lolu, I've never heard any Nigerian says Nigeria is a small market. 180 million people, give or take, and a $300 billion economy. Nigeria is not a big... they are going to be upset with you after the show.
I said that within the context of what we were discussing. I mean, relatively speaking, if you look at the total value of the advertising spend here, it's not, it doesn't quite match a big population. It's still growing. I mean, it's slowed down in the last 2 years because of the economy. But even at its very peak, it didn't match what South Africa had. You know, it wasn't even near what South Africa had.
I got you. I was just teasing you. I got you. I was just teasing you.
I would like to. Well, I think we're all going to turn on Odette.
We're going to turn to Odette.
I love this idea that the gamekeeper has now turned poacher. So the very guys, consultants who were auditing your performance as advertising agencies, are now your primary competitors. That it would be very nice for you to create a place for them at the ACA table and invite them to discuss your issues, even though they are your primary competitors.
Absolutely not.
Not in my lifetime.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
I will gladly always facilitate dialogue, and we welcome any discussion with any industry stakeholder. But to have a place at the boardroom table in the ACA would be deemed a conflict of interest, because you cannot be the judge, the jury and the executor. Yeah. I think we need to remember corporate governance, and we also need to know that, for example, I personally, and this is Odette's view, have a very big issue with consultants who are paid by agencies and who are paid by clients, who adjudicate in a pitch situation or who adjudicate cost consulting in terms of agency remuneration. I have a big concern with that, because I feel that it is a direct conflict of interest.
We'll deal with that matter. That's probably a matter for another show completely, because I got views on that, as you can imagine. But you know, maybe we're barking at the wrong tree here, and we're just making up a big thing out of nothing. In South Africa, just for example, and I'm going to get a quick perspective from Lolu as well. In South Africa, I mean, pretty much, what's the number of agencies which are affiliated to groups and those which are independent, if you will? Is it quite a big thing, or
you're looking at about a 90-10 split.
90-10 as in what? 90 are affiliated?
Yeah, and 10% independent.
That's a death of independence.
It might, but you can't look at it as the number of agencies. You've got to look at what agencies are billing what, and what agencies are controlling what part of ad spend. Because you have independent agencies who are much bigger or on par as a big multinational that is in the local market. So whilst the volume of agencies, and this is always the smoke and mirrors thing in our sector, is that you have a large multinational. If you look at, for example, just under the ACA barrier, we have about 40 or 50 groups of companies, but you have about 150 individual companies under that banner. And that plays a very, very, very
Thebe's right. We're going to have to roll that one over.
But before, maybe just for half a second, let's get a Nigerian perspective. How can we live a whole show without letting the mother country not say something? Lolu, just a quick one from your end. In Nigeria, what is the split like between the big networked groups and the independent agencies?
Well, let me put it this way: the top 8-10 agencies are network agencies, and then you have the rest that are also doing well but are not affiliated. The global independents are getting into Nigeria. They are coming with contracts that are easier. You don't have to be an affiliate. Quite a few of them appear to be making inroad into Nigeria at this point in time. And the truth is, usually the contract signed by the big network agencies with the local affiliates are so stiff that quite a few people want to opt out. At least in the last 3 years, I know big agencies that have opted out of their relationships. Insight opted out of its relationship with Grey. And I know that one or two others opted out of the relation because they felt it was too stifling.
That's power to the independent. Thank you to our guests, Odette van der Haar, CEO of the ACA,
and Clara Priester, Regional Director, East and Southern Africa, Education USA, and from Lagos, Lolu Akinwunmi, Group CEO, Prima Garnet, Nigeria.
Until next time, I'm Thebe Ikalafeng. We'll see you
next month with another exciting topic, and thank you for being with us, and once again thank you to the guests for being with us tonight.